of academic quality in the program in your view?
First of all, universities are compelled to evaluate their education, their research and activities we are doing here. And we as staff members are following these guidelines and rules. Quality and development within the university is everyone's responsibility here. What about you? How you feel about laws and regulations guiding our operations?
That's something that we don't perhaps often think about, but actually the fact that we offer the kinds of degrees that we do, that is quite heavily regulated. On the one hand by the Finnish national regulations, and then also in today's world by European regulations. And one of the most concrete ways in which we encounter this is, for example, the ECTS credits and the fact that a certain amount of hours goes into one ECT credit, for example. And then there's also, of course, Tampere University has its own regulations that guide the kind of work that we do.
And also faculty. LFC program is part of the Faculty of Management and Business. And the faculty also evaluates degree programs and the quality within those programs.
Yes. And then there's also, of course, as a university is an academic setting and most of our activities are research oriented, then we of course need to follow the guidelines set for responsible conduct of research and to make sure that the coursework that the students hand in as well as our own work abides by those guidelines and rules. How do you see the role of students then, Malla?
What I think here in the LFC program, we endorse good academic and study practices and also study-related responsible conduct of research, like you, Anni, mentioned. And regarding good study practices, they include, for instance, taking responsibility for one's own studies, respecting the work of others, and also acting responsibly in groups and other forms of collaboration, just to name a few.
Yeah, those are really important. So taking responsibility on one's own activities as a member of the university community, and then respecting everyone else, fellow students and teachers and administrative personnel alike. Yeah.
And also these good study practices include completing assignments within set timelines. So regarding different courses, we have different kinds of assignments that need to be returned on time. And this is part of good study practices as well.
Yes, that's true. If something happens and they can't do it, then of course there is flexibility, but that should be the principle. And then correspondingly, the teachers have the duty to check in that work by a certain or within a certain time frame.
And this is also important that, informing others if something happens, that you inform the teacher, the students inform us, as well as their peers, if they are, for instance, doing some kind of collaborative assignment. So it's important that always keep others informed, because, unforeseen circumstances may happen.
Yes, that's true. How about then within the LFC program more precisely, how is academic quality monitored and what kinds of quality assurance mechanisms are at place? What do you consider the key components there, Malla?
Well, I would list a graduate survey. Every graduating students from the program are asked to fill a graduate survey. Also course feedback, teacher feedback, master thesis grades, are important in assuring, the quality within the program. What about you, Anni? What do you think about these issues?
I would say that in the development of the program and in its curricular work, we take into consideration all of those components. So the graduate survey, for example, that you mentioned, in that survey, the students are already able to sort of evaluate and reflect back on the learning in the study program during the whole 2 years. So obviously the feedback and the information that we receive from there, that's different from feedback on individual courses. And course feedback is something that teachers always should collect on individual courses, and the teachers read the feedback carefully. And at least my impression is that teachers make small changes to the courses, sometimes even larger changes to the courses annually on the basis of course feedback. So course feedback is more short-term feedback, whereas graduate survey, for example, that would be more long-term feedback. And sometimes students wonder about whether feedback is collected anonymously or not. Well, sometimes you are asked to actually give course feedback with your name. And I think that's also a part of learning to give feedback. We should be able to respect each other in a way that we actually are able to give feedback face to face. And that's one of the skills that we are also trying to practice in various activities at courses as well. For example, master's thesis seminars, where students write reviews and act as discussants to each other's papers, how to give feedback, how to receive feedback.
Exactly. And in the LFC program, as in other degree programs, we have a planning group, and regularly we meet those participants who belong to the planning group. And we are also monitoring the quality by going through graduate surveys, by discussing about different feedback we have received. And also this, I think, is also a good way for us to embrace, and monitor the quality within the program. And also students are involved in the planning group meetings and activities within the planning group as a student representative. So Complex, the LFC Student Association, has a representative taking part in the meetings the planning group organizes.
Yeah, and how do you see the role of the student community more broadly in the quality assurance process?
I think it's very important to receive feedback also in this way, so that they can also, before the meetings, for instance, the student representative as part of the board members, they can ask students their views about different issues and then bring them forward to us when we meet and discuss these types of things. So I think it's very good that we have this kind of a student representative also taking part in the meetings. Then we can hear students' ideas, thoughts about different issues, for instance, related to curriculum development, how they feel, what kinds of courses we currently have, should they be changed somehow, and also other ideas, what could we do? For instance, regarding the marketing of the program.
And I think there one of the important things is that as the student representative is the representative of the student body, then they actually should and do, and that often functions really well. They represent the whole student community and collect their views on how studies are proceeding and bring out the stuff that functions as well as, of course, the stuff that does not function.
And in this way, we also hear lots of important issues and things that we can take then into consideration and make changes regarding, for instance, courses and contents of the courses.
How about then master's thesis grades? How do they form part of quality assurance? That's a grade that the student gets on the thesis, but how is it part of the quality assurance procedures then?
I think this is also a way for us to monitor how well, students have engaged in their own learning paths, and also just like reflecting on other degree programs as well. So how we as teachers, how we have enabled that kind of a growing.
The master's thesis is a relatively ambitious project. It is a large project and a proper research project that the student has to carry out. So master's thesis grades and the process that gives an indication about how well the courses have supported the students growing and learning, in the sense that they are able to complete the master's thesis. And I would say that the master's thesis that LFC students have completed, they are generally on a very, very high level, and that shows that on the one hand, we have really good students in the program, of course, who are dedicated and interested in learning, but also that the courses do actually support that process as well. But that's something that we constantly keep an eye on, definitely.
Yeah, I think the same. And it's also, I think it's important, besides collecting feedback from courses, from students, it's also important to generate feedback from the teachers, how they feel about these issues. Are there some kinds of issues that could be improved?
Yes, and I think that actually brings us to an important point in contemporary university education, and that's the question of whether students are customers, are they consumers of knowledge or not? And I would argue that the fact that you just mentioned that teachers also give feedback, that brings us to the question of the character of the university-student relationship, because at the end it is teachers who have the responsibility on the kind of education that is being offered. And the university-student relationship, that's fundamentally different from the market relationship where we have customers who purchase certain products. The university-student relationship is sort of a sui generis relationship. It's a specific relationship that shouldn't and can't really be modeled on any other metaphor, such as the customer relationship, for example. So that's a relationship between somebody who wants to learn new things, and also admits and is willing to admit that they don't perhaps know everything yet. And then there is somebody or an institution such as the university who teaches the student to learn new things. And that is why teachers have a certain specific responsibility. And that is also one of the reasons why it doesn't make sense to model academic learning on the basis of the customer relationship, in my view.
I think that one of the important tasks or the duty for the teacher is also give feedback. So give feedback to the students. And this can take in a format of individual feedback or group feedback, or just reflecting what has been happening during the course, based on course feedback, how the students have felt about different things the teacher asks in the survey, so in the course survey. So teachers can also pose specific questions related, for instance, different kinds of assignments that has been developed based on earlier feedback.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and that actually shows in a very concrete way how the university-student relationship is different from a customer or consumer perspective, because if I go to a store and buy something, I don't expect the shopkeeper to give me feedback. Whereas at the university, the students are entitled and should always receive feedback on their learning processes. And I think this is something that where the students can also be active themselves. If they feel that they need more feedback, I would recommend that the students ask for more feedback. So for that reason, exactly, there is not any standard answer there, but the students should and can be active in that process and getting the feedback that they feel that they need.